What is going on? I want to welcome you from half court for today. I am Sean Murphy, joined once again and long last by my other half, not only on the podcast but in life. Troy Sergey. Troy, brother, good to see you, man. How are you? How was your time away? It's great to be talking basketball with you once again.
Yeah, awesome. Great to be back, Sean. Had a good, relaxing vacation in Arizona this week with my family. I was able to catch a Suns game, see Kevin Durant in person is always fun. I was able to catch some March Madness, of course, this weekend. There were a few upsets, but I think last year around this time, there's probably a little bit more. But we are in the home stretch. Last, 3.5 weeks of the regular season? Isn't that crazy?
Yeah,
So there's a lot of
yeah.
playoff pushes going on both conferences, and we are here for the ride.
Yeah, 100%, man. And you look at the standings and how many games left. There's really about 10, 11 games left for each team in the league, and there's still a lot to be determined in the standings, specifically how that Eastern Conference is going to shake out. The Pistons have to hold strong in this really difficult schedule, or there's a legitimate chance that if Atlanta gets hot and Detroit is not, we could be having a conversation about playing games. But at the same time, there's real possibility that Detroit could rise up as well. So,
Mhm.
a lot of very interesting things that we're going to be talking about today, playoffs related, play-in related, but just Pistons related as well, because that's what we do here, baby. This is From Half Court. We talk all things Pistons and NBA basketball. If you like that, sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification button so you're not missing any of the content, but also be sure you follow us on social media so you're not missing any of our takes in the moment, as well as any coverage that we can bring. Myself at Sean Halfcourt for any live game coverage and any potential interviews, media opportunities, things like that. And if you want to just hear Troy's random occasional thoughts, where he'll just tweet about like Henry Ellenson or Jonas Jerebko, you can follow him at Troy Sergey 44. But Troy, I want to get started with it's been obviously we're coming off of that really good like great month of February for the Pistons, and I would say it's still been a good like month. The month of March was solid, but it was a rockier road for the Pistons, I would say, over the last couple of weeks. In their last 10, they're 5-5. They obviously have played some pretty good teams, but they've also lost a couple of mysterious ones, right? They lost the one to the Washington Wizards. They let certain games kind of slip. The Dallas one in particular, I think was a rather confusing loss to a lot of people. The OKC loss, obviously, we covered a little bit in the refs getting hot and things to that nature. So although this team is still like in their, like ever since the All-Star break, they're still playing above where they were before the All-Star break. Does their play of late bring up any concerns for you? And if anything, does it ground your expectations of what this season is? What is, I know you've been busy and doing a lot of stuff, but what has been your takeaways from the Pistons basketball you've been able to watch?
Yeah, looking at the losses in particular, I think of the three games that you mentioned of Dallas, OKC, and Washington. I think in each game there were some things that were a little bit concerning. I think the Wizards game, probably the big one in particular, that they just couldn't hold it in the fourth quarter to get the win. So I think holding games, not playing super competitive for for 4 quarters out of the game would be some of the things that maybe concern me a little bit. Mostly what makes that concerning is going into playoff time, because we know, Sean, better than anyone who's watched playoff basketball for decades now, you have to bring your A game, especially if you're a team, like a fifth or a sixth seed, like the Pistons are probably going to be this year. You have to be clicking, and especially if one of those playoff series goes to 6 games, maybe even a seventh game, you have to be able to be firing on all cylinders. And some of those games, again, I'm mostly looking at the Wizards game because I watched from first quarter to fourth quarter live in the moment. It just seemed like we weren't we weren't putting out our best A effort that we've seen throughout the year. And kind of answer the second part of your question, Sean, of, does this put a taint on this season? No, I think because of how good this team has played and how it's totally exceeded our expectations, I think I predict. I think we all predicted that there would be games like that this year where we haven't fully lived up to our potential. But I just
Mhm.
want to see in these last 10, 11 games of the season for us to go on some runs, some show that we can play high competitive basketball for 48 minutes and use that as momentum into the playoff season.
Yeah, I think a couple of things that you said there, just keeping up that energy level for all 4 quarters and not playing down to the competition
Big time.
that you're facing. I think the Wizards game, it was interesting because it's a back-to-back, against Washington at home. The first one wasn't even close. I was there for that one. And then, that they're gonna wanna come out and not lose to the same team 2 times in a row in the same building, right?
Mhm.
So that one you kind of understand. The thing that stuck out to me about some of these losses and when Detroit is struggling is you can almost directly correlate it to when this team is not running or getting out in the fast break, they are not winning.
Mm.
Like, if you could really summarize, like, because again, I didn't say, like, like, tainting the season, but maybe, like, changes, like, your expectations of what this trajectory is, like, grounds, like, where you think this team will end up at the end of the season, because I think what really stands out is when this team is slowed down, forced to play in the half court, especially when they don't have a Jaden Ivey to, who can create his own offense consistently in the half court alongside of Cade Cunningham. That's when they struggled. Like the Dallas game, they only had 6 fast break points.
Wow. Wow.
Like, you wanna talk
Yeah.
about, like, they just the book is out on Detroit. Like, it's no longer, like, a story that's catching people off guard. Like, they are, like, straight up, like, they are a way better team when they are running in the open floor than when they're not. And then you go to the Pelicans game that win, they have 16.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, like, massive difference when you're not having those, easy opportunities, and I think you see in particular a guy like an Asar Thompson
Yeah.
struggles a lot more when you're not running, because that's where you see the impact of not having his three-point shot, of not having, a whole lot of shot, like, jump shooting ability is what's really kind of cramming him in the half court, in my opinion, kind of been some of the struggles that he's been facing as the season's gone on.
Right, right. And I think with Asar, Sean, he makes this and helps make this a fast break team. And when he's not on the floor, you instantly feel that. Now, I think especially this last game, we didn't have Asar, but we had a Ron Holland, who I would call him a fast break player as well. He can certainly get out in the open and create and just bring this plethora of athleticism to your offense. So you're right. I guess I never really knew the statistics behind that 6 point fast break, game against the Mavericks there. But I think that you're right. There is a correlation, and to watch this team and when we're winning games, when we're going out on leads, I think there's been a lot of games this year where we've really jumped fast on teams in the first half, and we've done that by
Yep,
running fast, right? We're playing a really fast
yep.
paced offense because we know these guys
Either
can
causing
score.
turnovers or
Yeah,
getting out in
yeah.
the fast break right after a miss. Like,
Mhm, mhm.
that is when this team is in their sweet spot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Which is going to be really interesting to see how that translates in the playoffs because traditionally playoff basketball is a little bit slower.
Yep. And not only that, but teams are able to prepare specifically for you on a repeated basis. Like it's not like, oh, we're gonna do some prep work on Detroit and then we'll do some prep work on Denver because we have them later this week. No, your entire focus is how do we beat this team 4 times out of 7?
Hmm.
How do we make their lives more uncomfortable? What did we see in the last game? What do we do in the next game? I guarantee you, Tom Thibodeau is going to watch Pistons tape and go, "Oh yeah, look at what the Clippers did against them. Look at what the Thunder did against them. Look what Dallas did against them. Don't let them run. Take
Hmm.
care of the basketball. Rebound your misses. Like those are the big things that that get in Detroit's way. And I think what really is impressive is like you said, whenever Detroit has needed that energy or has needed that momentum, Ron Holland has been there.
Mhm.
And the fact that you've like one of your most stable, consistent, not only players but forces of energy has been a rookie is something that really excites you, especially for like a top 5 pick. Obviously not the most consistent as far as his performance, but if you're talking the most consistent as far as his energy and his, and his readiness to go every night, that's Ron Holland. And you
Yeah.
saw it in the Pelicans game. They needed every bit of his scoring to get that win. He had 26 points and he had 5 assists. He was getting on the boards as well, and he was shooting really efficiently. And Troy, the thing that stands out about Ron, very apparently is his touch around the rim for a rookie is
Mhm.
pretty elite. So to me, the questions that I start to have, and I think where everyone starts to go when you see rookies have these types of performances, is what's the ceiling? What could this look like 5 years from now? What could this look like when Ron Holland is 23,
Mhm.
24 years old, like a Cade Cunningham? Could we be talking about Ron Holland as an all-star caliber player one day? And I think if you look at the tools, the energy, the IQ that he plays with, it's pretty easy to see him getting to that point.
Yeah, yeah, Sean. A player that I was thinking about during that stretch on Sunday against the Pelicans was like, do you remember like 2009, 2010? Rookie and even sophomore DeMar DeRozan. He didn't really have a
Mhm.
touch. Outside, the 3-point line, and his mid-range game, he was still developing that. But he was a slasher, right? He could get to the rim, but also not just crafty around the rim, but he could, again, like I said, he had the athleticism to get to the rim, right? He had a good crossover game, and he was just quick and athletic and doing all the right things. So we certainly know that DeMar DeRozan's had quite a few All Stars here throughout his career. Just a great player. I'm not gonna 100% predict that Ron Holland is the next DeMar DeRozan, because I think there still is some things that they do a lot differently. But at least
Yep.
just kind of that young, athletic, raw, still figuring out the 3-point touch, but also Ron Holland did make, I think, 2 threes in that Pelicans game. Um, that's a player that I think that is a realistic um, goal or expectation for Ron Holland. I think he can be like a DeMar DeRozan kind of player. Am I wrong to say that? Is that too much?
Not at all. In fact, Troy, I actually think it's time we play a little bit of a throwback game
Yeah,
between you and I. When we were in college, one of the things that we really liked to do when we were bored, or one of the
yeah,
things we would text about whenever we would talk NBA, is we would talk about a player and we would go ceiling, floor, reality.
yeah.
And we would list 3 players that fit each category for a certain player we're talking about. For Ron Holland, the absolute ceiling to me is like a Jalen Brown type,
Mhm.
where he's a two-way star that is an elite athlete who, if he develops his shot creating and his jump shot more, can be that elite type of athlete. But like you said, is kind of that like came into the league as that raw athlete that just affects the game in ways, even if it's not always in scoring or even in those ways that show up on the stat sheet. I think a floor, like you said, could be like a Toronto DeMar DeRozan, not necessarily like all-star DeRozan, but like, kind of right before he really got,
Mhm.
elite. And I think if I were to give like that reality or kind of that middle ground, another name that's been thrown around a lot for Ron Holland that I really like as well, because this also brings into the personality aspect of it, is a Ron Artest. And,
Mm.
just the way that he plays with his physicality on both sides of the court. People forget Ron Artest is known for his clamps as a defender, but he was, especially in his prime, he was a special athlete and he was an elite scorer for a bit there too. Before he went out and punched some people in the stands in the Palace, he was actually one of the best players in the league at that time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He certainly got his buckets, and the Los Angeles Lakers in 2010, in some ways, owe a championship to Ron Artest. I mean, he hit that big shot in Game 7 against the Celtics. He
Mhm.
played lockdown defense that entire series. So, I mean, again, when we're talking about the finals and a team like the Lakers in that era in their history, you it's guys like Ron Artest that are going to make the difference. So having that translated to Detroit Pistons basketball, it's guys like Ron Holland who are going to make the difference. We know what Cade's going to do. We know what Jalen Duren is going to do. But what can Ron Holland, when he's on the court, contribute to this team? And we have seen some good sample sizes all the season long of the high potential that a Ron Holland has in years to come. And he's only a rookie. What is he? Is he 18 or 19?
He's 19. He's not.
Okay.
He was
Yeah.
born.
Yeah.
I actually looked this up the other. I looked this up the other day. He wasn't even born when the Pistons won their last championship. He was born in September of
Yeah.
2005. He was born over a calendar year
Wow.
after the Pistons last won a championship. So when you talk about how young this guy is and just how much more potential and how much more to tap in there really is, like I
Yeah.
think that really puts it into perspective there. And then you just throw in the fact that he's got that chip on his shoulder from the G League Ignite. You throw in the fact that he has the prerequisite relationship with Cade where they practically grew up with each other in Texas. And you just, everything he brings to the table as a player, to me, it's been a perfect fit. And I think he's someone that's really not only resonating in the locker room, but really resonating with the fan base too. He's quickly become one of the fan favorites for sure.
Right. How can you not like a guy who gives his 110% effort each and every night?
And he's not afraid to be himself, show some personality, even go out there and get into some altercations if he doesn't like what's going on.
That's Detroit Pistons basketball.
Yep, exactly. Another guy that resonates really deeply with the fan base and the team, Jaden Ivey. We obviously saw him go down towards New Year's Day when we were playing the Orlando Magic, and he went down and broke his leg after that mix up with Cole Anthony when they were both diving for the ball. Uh, and we thought at the moment that was probably the end of Ivey's season. We didn't rule out the possibility of a Jaden Ivey return and what that could look like, and but it didn't seem very likely. However, the Pistons had never came out and said his season was done. In fact, the way they talk about Jaden Ivey on the broadcast and on social media is like a Jaden Ivey that fully intends on coming back. And there was video shared by Cody Davis of the Detroit News. Shout out Cody. There was footage of Jaden Ivey running in the Pistons practice facility on the court. So 3 months removed from breaking his leg, obviously the one type of fracture that you could come back from in this type of timeline, he is now running. So we have about 3-4 weeks now until the playoffs, Troy. And Jaden Ivey is not only in full weight bearing activities, but he is beginning to run. He is beginning to shoot. He is beginning to do more and more things that could potentially lead to a return. So I'm starting to think, Troy, that the odds are more likely than not that we are going to see Jaden Ivey in some capacity come playoff time. What is your reaction to that possibility? And what do you think that kind of role looks like? Because it's not like you can just expect him to come back in and play 30, 35 minutes a night when he hasn't played in 3 months. And oh yeah, his first ever playoff situation, this first time matching any type of intensity in his professional career.
Yeah, certainly exciting, obviously, because we know what Jaden Ivey is capable of doing. We saw some stretches early on this year where he was really going on a scoring limit. We as Pistons fans love that. But I think I think I asked you a couple months ago, like, hey, Sean, the Pistons haven't come out and bluntly said that he's out for the year. What's your take? And you kind of said, well, as great as it would be for him to return, how are you going to fit him into the offense? And that's still a question I have. I think that's going to be really difficult no matter what, even if it is a 10 to 15 minute a night role. I think that's probably, if you are going to, that is kind of your limit, in my opinion, of what you can do. You can put him maybe in the last 3 minutes of the first quarter and just, you know, play a little bit of iso ball. I mean, I think he has proven and shown that, when he has the green light to score, he's going to deliver for you. And I
Mhm.
think that that could be valuable in the playoffs regardless. But again, I have a hard time really seeing, yeah, anything really even over 20 minutes, Sean. But it's going to be
Yeah.
interesting. I would love to be proven wrong there and see 25 minutes a night or whatever, and still a second or third, choice on the offensive end to score the ball. But we'll have to see. We'll have to see. I'm curious to hear your thoughts, though.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think a lot of your thoughts there are pretty spot on, Troy. I think when you look at like what's like a possible or what's a realistic, like expectation if a Jaden Ivey were to come back, because I do think this would be a little bit of an accelerated timeline, even with the type of recovery that it is. I think that the most you can you could ideally expect would be a 20, maybe as the playoffs push on, 25 minutes a night if you really need, and for that type of for that type of run. But more than likely, I don't think it would exceed 20 minutes a night. And I think one thing that makes it more, because obviously we had those conversations of like, well, you know, like to have Ivy come in, have that type of pressure to to have to initiate a lot when he hasn't played in a couple of months. I think one thing that would make it a lot more plausible and perhaps put him in a better position to succeed is if you bring him off the bench and you play him with Dennis Schroeder,
Mm,
because we've seen, Schroeder's ability to get guys set up off the ball and to put him in better positions to succeed. A guy, for example, that we've been talking about for a while as someone that needs to play off ball more, Marcus Sasser played really well against the Pelicans the other night. I only had like two misses, I think, in the entire game. But like the big thing is if you have someone like Schroeder or Cade at any given time where Ivy doesn't have to do a whole lot of actually setting things up himself or initiating the offense, but rather playing within the flow of the offense, I think it's something that could be really beneficial. And if he can have 80% of his speed and explosiveness, he's still faster than the majority of the players in the league. And and I think the big thing would be if he can replicate and bring back that shot making specifically from beyond the arc that we've seen from earlier this season, because he was a 40% three-point shooter. Let's remember.
mhm.
If he can bring that back into the fold and into the equation for the Pistons, that just takes that much more pressure off of a Cade. That just makes you that much harder to guard. That just brings that much more, like relief both in the half court offense, but also in the fast break because Jaden Ivey can run. I just think that, if those things align, I do think he could come back and have a productive role. But it is also a lot to ask of a third year player who is also extension eligible this summer. So there's a lot of dynamics and different things that go into it. But again, I'm not surprised at all that Jaden Ivey is pushing. And I would imagine if you were to ask him, he'd probably say, yeah, no, I'm going to be back.
Yeah, yeah. But at the end of the day, too, I trust Coach Bickerstaff with this decision, and at least equipping him back into the offense on the practice, because really it starts in practice, right? Of really
Mm-hmm.
looking at, we saw the video of him conditioning and things like that, but how does he fit when they go 5-on-5, when he's back into playing 5-on-5 basketball in practice, and what kind of things does the coaching staff see, and what kind of things are they honest about that they're lacking from the offensive end, and what can Ivy fit? And one thing too, we're talking about offense, but Sean, he's shown massive improvements on the defensive end too. You're going to
Mm-hmm.
get a guy who's giving his 110% effort on the defensive end, of really being locked in on his defender, and really
Yep.
defense helps win games in the playoffs. We know that you
Yep.
cannot win playoff games, let alone playoff series, if you don't have strong wing defenders. And I just think there's a lot of things that he can do to improve this team. It's just about what can the coaching staff utilize him for if he decides to make a return.
And we know that he can, be a higher level defender when he's when he's healthy. But the question is, will he have the legs under him
Sure.
to still play, to that level on that side of the ball? So definitely a lot of things, into consideration there. I imagine this will be something that will be closely, like talked about with the medical staff, with the front office, with the coaching staff, and with Ivy to really come together and put together what's a best plan. If they could possibly somehow get him a couple of games or some action before the playoffs, that would be ideal. But at the same time, there is also a massive difference between jogging in place in a in a practice facility and playing full contact 5-on-5 basketball, sprinting, having that trust in yourself and in your leg as well. Cause there's also the mental hurdle of coming back from an injury too. So, it's a lot of different factors that go into it. But I think for the Pistons, the fact that this is even a scenario, I think is something that you have to be thrilled about.
Absolutely, I'm certainly thrilled about it. Would do you think? Do you think certainly like you look at the last like couple of games of the year, 3 or 4 games of the year? Do you think that's the prime opportunity to see what he can do, or do you think the playoffs is a better scenario of when exactly that return will be, like game one of the playoffs, or do you think the last couple of games is the best way to put him into the rotation to start?
Yeah, I don't know how long he's actually been running for.
Okay.
I think he was just cleared for that, like pretty recently. So I would imagine that, as I think ideally the last 3-4 games, would be like best case scenario of like getting him in the flow. But at the same time, they might not have that luxury. That he might not be cleared. Like there's a possibility he might not be cleared to like game 3 or game 4
Mhm.
of the first round, right? It's really whenever you can get him back and whenever he feels ready, because like it's kind of that fine line if you want to bring him back into the fold, but you don't want to bring him back too quick,
Yeah.
right? Because we've seen certain franchises, cough cough, Dallas Mavericks, cough cough, who have gone out and done certain things like that and bite them in the butt. So, especially with someone that young and with that type of injury, you don't want to mess with it too
Hmm.
much.
Hmm. That's right. That's right. Looking forward to seeing what happens, though, Sean.
Yeah, for sure. And no matter what, Detroit, we know that that come playoff time, they will be in the national spotlight, but that's not been the only time, Troy. Over the last couple of weeks in particular, the Pistons have been all over national TV games, NBA social media accounts have been pushing the Cade Cunningham propaganda and agenda. The Pistons, I would say, have arrived to the mainstream optics and the mainstream fold. It took them to get to about a 40-win season with about 3 weeks to a month to go. But I think we've talked before about and even Cade has said in the past, you want to get respect in this league, you got to win games. That's we know in order to get that respect, you have to win. And I think that's exactly what you're seeing here. And I think what makes a Cade Cunningham so special is the elite players in this game not only play as well when the lights are brighter, but also elevate their game when the lights are bright.
Hmm.
And not only did Cade do that in Miami at first, obviously he struggled quite a bit in that first quarter, but then he helped Detroit, surge back into that game and hit that crazy game winner at the top of the 3-point line. Might not have called bank, but he got it nonetheless. And he did it over Bam Adebayo on ESPN with the whole national media, with the whole, like, essentially national media going, okay, is this the Pistons time? This is your spot. Let's find out. Cause that whole game, Troy, was a spotlight for the
Hmm.
Pistons.
Hmm.
The Heat were on that big losing streak. Things were down in Miami. This was a feel good Detroit night. And not only did the Pistons make good on it, I think they maximized their opportunities. And because of it, their next game against Oklahoma City will also be on ESPN.
Which is exciting.
So,
So exciting.
yeah. Troy, how much do you think it is, how much do you think this is good for, not only the locker room and just for the team, just for, having that extra, those extra eyes and, just for the organization as a whole, but also like, do you think this is something that we will see go into next season as well? Like, do you think that now that we are here seeing this, do you think there's a chance the Pistons could have double-digit national TV games next season?
Yeah, there's a chance. There's a chance. I think a good example that we can look at is the Indiana Pacers last year certainly exceeded expectations by going to the Eastern Conference Finals. We saw an All-Star breakout with Tyrese Halliburton, and I don't quite know exactly a number on the top of my hand of level or number of nationally televised games that the Pacers played this year. But if I had to guess, total guess, I would guess about 8 or 9 would be a number I
Mhm.
want to throw out there. Maybe 10. I think that would be a realistic expectation for the Pistons. Again, the Pistons, I'm not sure if we can, push an Eastern Conference Finals run, but we have seen stars perform. We have seen that this is a team worth watching. And yes,
14, by the way.
say it again.
14
14.
national TV
Okay, so
games
I
for the
was a
Pacers.
little on the low ball, but still,
Well,
yeah.
actually, 9 on ESPN or TNT,
Okay,
5 on NBA TV on NBA TV,
okay,
so
okay. So I think that,
I think you're actually right,
yeah,
to be honest
yeah,
with you, because
yeah.
NBA
You're right.
TV is kinda a little I mean, NBA TV is a great channel, don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
It's kinda their way to little flex and go, "Oh, but it's a national TV game," even though,
yeah,
not a lot of people have that
yeah.
in their cable package.
I will say, when I answered that question, I was not taking NBA TV into consideration. So 9, there
Hey,
we go.
no, totally valid. Yeah, totally valid. No disrespect to NBA TV. Shout out
Yeah,
IT. But
yeah,
anyway,
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, and I think again, the Indiana Pacers proved last year that they are a team worth watching. They have guys that are worth watching. They have stars that are going to play competitive basketball, and that similarly, that very fast-paced offense that they run is similar to what's made this Pistons team successful in their ability to run and push the fast break and score. And a guy like Cade Cunningham is the one leading the charge. So yeah, I think I would love 9 or 10 games on ESPN or TNT next year. So it's gonna be fun to watch and see. But I think as far as the moral of the locker room, yeah, I mean it's like, hey, those guys know what they're capable of playing. You do not have to tell the Detroit Pistons locker room that they can compete with any of the other 29 teams in the league, right? They know
mhm,
that they can do that. So when they have a national spotlight game, it's like, okay, it's not like we have to pretend to be something we're not. We just need to go out there and play like we already are and have the skills that we do have and the intangibles that we do and have been proven all year to have. So that's kind of my mindset. We'll watch, at least what I think the Pistons are thinking about in the locker room moving
yeah.
forward when there are nationally televised games.
No, and JB and players on the team have said the same thing is even though, we are playing on national TV, the focus, like our mentality doesn't change, our the way what we want to execute doesn't change. They got there by being the Pistons and playing Pistons basketball and putting the ball in Cade Cunningham's hands and making stops and getting in the fast break. Do that and you will be, in the spotlight for quite a while. And I think when you have a player like a Cade Cunningham, like that rising up and coming player, someone who, I think the league is starting to recognize is a star, is someone that you can put equity behind, that you can really invest to, which I think we really are seeing the league doing. I mean, they like their social media accounts have been pumping out the Cade Cunningham content, making sure people are aware of who he is and who the Pistons are. Like that has been a conscious effort from the league. And we've been talking, again, I believe we brought this up on the podcast before, but it's like we've been talking for weeks at like national media. A lot of people have been talking who's the next face of the league, who could be in that conversation. We brought up before that Cade Cunningham, someone that would very much fit that mold. I think we're starting to see the practice of it, and I think the league is going, oh wait, no, that is a guy that we can actually rely on. Like that is actually somebody who we could be proud to put the league behind. So I think I not only do I think it's just a great thing for for Cade and for the league, but also just the more coverage that teams are getting just because they're good and fun basketball teams to watch and not because of the market that they play in, I think the better.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely, Sean. Yeah, there's nothing there I disagree with.
Yeah, there's the sometimes you just drop a bar and there's not really
Yeah,
anything else to say on
right.
that. No, I definitely feel that. So I think that's going to be, again, it's going to be fun to watch. And listen, if the Pistons play a New York Knicks in the first round, They won't be the NBA TV playoff series. They will be on TNT. They will be on ESPN or on ABC. They will be front and center and in a very marquee matchup there. So will definitely be fun to see how that all pans out. My guts just told me, and it's just felt like for a while that the Knicks and the Pistons have just been on a collision course. And to me, it just feels almost unavoidable at this point to me, Troy. Although the Pacers are making a run and they could get that third seed.
Yeah, that would be really interesting. I know Milwaukee lost yesterday against Phoenix Suns. So, and we play Cleveland. Sorry, we play Cleveland twice, I think more, but also we play Milwaukee twice. So those Milwaukee games are going to be really, really important. Down the stretch. I think that's early April that we play
Yep.
them. So, it's going to be a tough push with looking at each of their calendars. But you're right. There's a lot of different cards that can be drawn, and seeing where things scatter with how some of these other teams finish. The New York Knicks being one of them, the Indiana Pacers being another one. And again, like you said, they're on the high, but also the Milwaukee Bucks. They got Kuzma, which we've talked about that trade a little bit on the podcast, and it's be
Mm-hmm.
really interesting of Giannis's, I think, last push to really say, "Hey, is this Milwaukee Bucks team and roster that you've put around me worth me staying in the future? Right? If is this the roster that I can win a championship for?" And they still have again a push to and a story to be said about where they are, but I think I wouldn't be surprised if they fell even a little more too. So could the Pistons go up to a fifth seed? That's going to be
Yeah.
really interesting to see.
Well, that's the funny thing is we could have been having this conversation about the Pistons and the Knicks as the 3 and the 6, but there's also a world where they just still play each other anyway, but just as the 4 and the 5.
Mm-hmm.
So, just funny how things shake out, but nonetheless, whatever series Detroit draws, we know it's going to be a really entertaining playoff series. It's just if we're being honest and being objective, the Knicks one is probably the most winnable
Mm-hmm.
for Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
And I would add on the Giannis thing. Nothing can throw chaos into this league more than the Milwaukee Bucks losing in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
Because if the Bucks lose in the first round, everything's on the table. Everything. Giannis being on a new team, Dame being on a new team, Doc Rivers being ending his coaching career. Everything is on the table if the Milwaukee Bucks get out in the first round. The only other thing that I think could throw more chaos that could throw just as much chaos into the league in the coming years. I don't know if this will be a short-term impact, but the Boston Celtics have officially sold. And Troy, they did not sell internally. They sold to an external candidate who bought the team for $6 billion, 6.1 billion to be specific. Not only is this the largest purchase of a sports franchise in all of pro sports, Troy, normally when you buy an NBA team, when you buy a team, you're also buying the arena. Well, the Celtics sale didn't include the arena.
Wow.
So they bought the Celtics brand for $6 billion. And not only is this significant, this is significant for multiple reasons. Number one, obviously, the most storied franchise in the history of the league just sold. That's big. This also sets a price for when expansion comes, because now the NBA can have a latest baseline and go, hey, we just sold it. One of our teams just sold for $6 billion. That's the price to buy into this league. Like that accelerates expansion talks. But also, and I think this is the number one thing in people's heads after what just happened in Dallas, we saw everything flip on its head in a snap when Patrick Dumont and his ownership group took over and changed the whole entire trajectory of that franchise. Not saying that this person's going to come in and trade Jason Tatum or Jalen
Yeah, what are
Brown
you getting at,
or
Sean?
anything. What I'm getting at is when you bring a new owner into the equation, things are going to change inherently. And next season, the Boston Celtics are supposed to have the highest payroll in NBA history. And now, the person who just wrote a $6.1 billion check is going to be asked to have the most expensive payroll in the NBA's history next season. If they don't win a championship, that's going to be a hard ask. But that's what makes these sales so interesting, Troy, is all these teams that you just think are going to be behemoths for years to come, and are their trajectory is just automatic. Even the Boston Celtics can face this type of unpredictability.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point, and you're right. I think a lot of pressure is going to be on their shoulders of delivering a second championship. Going back to back, and even thinking about a guy like Derek White, and just thinking about how much he contributes to this Boston Celtics team. You think of Drew Holiday as well. What's their role is going to be in the future too, and what does new ownership think about their careers and abilities to perform on the roster? Because you're right, I don't think there's a world where you're going to touch Tatum or Brown, but some of these other guys that really help make the Boston Celtics a great team, what are their futures going to look like? And those are the names that I think about more than I guess your two stars.
Yeah, Bill Chisholm is the name, by the way. The way the luxury tax works, guys like Sam Hauser, for example,
Yeah.
he's someone that they gave a $20 million a year extension because of the luxury tax, because of the salary apens. Even though Sam Hauser's contract is $20 million, and that's his official payroll that he will get next season, what he will really cost to the Celtics is $80 million because of the penalties of the luxury tax. I like Sam Hauser. I don't know if he's worth $80 million
Yeah.
uh for a single season.
Right.
Like Al Horford is going to be a free agent this summer, and he is huge to their culture. Like that is he is the heart and soul of the Celtics.
Mhm.
I do not think that is hyperbolic to say. I think teammates in that locker room would say he's the heart and soul of that locker room. So I think there's an expectation to take care of him too. And not to say that these guys won't, because listen, you write a $6.1 billion check. His name's Bill Chisholm. He's a private equity guy. He grew up in Massachusetts. He's from the Boston area. He was a Celtics fan. For all we know, he could be coming in, and supposedly the old owner is going to serve as the governor for the first 3 seasons. But at the same time, we thought Mark Cuban was still going to supposedly have basketball operations control in the Mavericks, and that didn't play out to be true. So I still think the Celtics are fine. They're one of the greatest organizations in sports. The infrastructure's still there. If they just let the right people continue to do their jobs, the Celtics will be perfectly fine. However, it's something now that after the Luka Doncic trade, I think is going to be much more interesting to note, or much more interesting to monitor, because we have now seen a prime example in Dallas and in Phoenix of ways that new owners can completely obliterate your franchise, if not come in and doing things properly.
Yeah, question quick, just to clarify, is the luxury tax tied into the collective bargaining agreement? Okay,
Yes,
yeah,
that's something that's agreed upon. It's part of the salary cap.
sure.
It's essentially when you're over these aprons, you have to pay, like when you're over the salary cap, you have to pay essentially the luxury tax for keeping that payroll together.
Gotcha.
Like that is your penalty essentially.
Right.
So right. So that's why like the Warriors, for example, was going to be super hard, like pretty much impossible to keep together, because unless they're winning championships, you're having like a 300, $400 million payroll season. And even though the Warriors make a ton of money, that's a lot of money to pay
Mhm.
if you're not getting that very, very top level
Right,
success.
so that really requires teams in the offseason to really be honest in their assessment of um, what they have in house as a roster and what
Mhm.
players are movable and what are not. And sometimes
Yeah, and you're
you're
gonna
gonna
have to
make
see.
you're gonna watch teams not only make the right decisions, but you're gonna watch a lot of teams make the wrong decision too. You look at
Mhm.
even like the Denver Nuggets, a guy so simple as Bruce Brown. We talked about him a few years ago, right? A big vital piece in some of those playoff games that helped them win the championship, and they just weren't the same
Mhm.
after him. And again, I in no way, shape, or form would ever identify Bruce Brown as a star in this league, but he's a
Yeah.
guy that can help you win games. So
Well, and by the
yeah,
way, I don't think Bruce Brown sorry to interrupt. I don't think Bruce Brown regrets the contract he signed and the payday that he got. I bet you he regrets leaving Denver just as much as Denver regrets losing him.
hmm hmm yeah, yeah. I never thought about that quite, but he's certainly been jumping around.
Yeah, he's in New Orleans
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
He was in Indiana, who immediately flipped him to Toronto as part of the Pascal trade,
hmm
and then they immediately flipped him to
Brandon Ingram.
to New Orleans as part of the Brandon Ingram trade. So yeah, he hasn't found that consistent home since. So, but yeah, for Boston, they as of right now, they are slated to have a payroll of over $220 million next season,
Well,
and that's before luxury tax. That's before all of those things that kick in. That's before Al Horford is considered into the equation. Luke Cornett, another guy they really like, he's expiring this offseason as well. So like that's the thing. Like you said, like I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a great problem to have having too many good players, but you have to really make sure that you're keeping the players that you know you have to keep around.
yep.
That you cannot even begin to risk losing out of the fold. So again, it's going to be fascinating to watch, how they make those decisions and how everything goes going forward. I think if there's any team that can, handle this type of transition and still come out just fine the other end, I think it's the
Yeah,
Boston Celtics.
absolutely. It has to
But
be an important
but
part of this equation.
yeah. Mhm. Yep, for sure. Another situation, Troy, I made fun of this franchise just a few minutes ago. The Dallas Mavericks, the last topic of today's show. Anthony Davis is back despite all logic and reason and speculation that his season was done. He has made the push to come back. And when asked why he came back, he said because he was seeing his guys fight each and every night, and they're still in the position to be the 10th seed. He's a basketball player. He wants to play basketball if he's able to, and he wants to, be that franchise player for his team. And I think that's commendable. I think that's, I don't think you ever knock a player for wanting to play basketball, especially when, when they're putting their body on the line and they know the risks. Having said that, if the Dallas Mavericks end up in a situation, because again, we've already thought that every possible bad thing that happen to this team has already happened. But if Anthony Davis re-aggravates this injury, or somehow it's an even worse injury because he's overcompensating for having an injury, I mean, we might get to riot territories, Troy. Like it is already as hostile in Dallas as it can get. If this gets even worse with Anthony Davis,
Yeah.
I don't even. Could it get worse than that?
Right, right. Because then if you have another
Like,
season,
what if Anthony Davis tears his
right,
Achilles?
right, right. Yeah. Then it's like, okay, you traded Luka Doncic for potato chips. You traded Luka Doncic for potato chips at that
Not even potato chips for the bag.
point.
You got one of those Lay's potato chips bags in the gas station, but it's one of those bags where it was like 70% air.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, what the hell? These aren't even salted.
Yeah.
All right, man. All we had.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess I don't know. I mean, like the Dallas Mavericks hanging around that 10th seed right now, or are they 11th seed even?
So right now they're kind of tied with
Yeah,
Phoenix.
yeah.
They're that 10th seed. Phoenix technically holds the tiebreaker currently, but they're right there. Both teams are very unpredictable and also very bad. So I think they both could definitely uh fight for that. I think all logic would say that you'd probably favor the Suns in that scenario,
Right, right.
but the Phoenix Suns have defied all logic all season
So
long.
I guess
So that's why you can't really think of them in that light.
right. My point of bringing that up is that okay, you're the 10th seed. You have options here of, losing and resting Anthony Davis, giving him all the time in the world to have a great comeback for the 2025-2026 season and see what he's capable of doing, or see if he's able to be the player that you traded Luka Doncic for him to be, or you risk it all for a play-in spot that you're the underdog for.
Yep.
That's the two options you have. And by playing him, you are telling the whole world that you are going to risk it all to get a 10th seed in the play-in tournament and hopefully get a first round matchup with the Oklahoma City Thunder out of it. I just don't know if that's the smart move, Sean.
Yeah, I listen. I think Anthony Davis. Like I feel a lot of sympathy for him in this trade, in this whole ordeal. Don't get me wrong, he's paid a lot of money to play basketball and to do it at a high level. He lives a very fortunate life. Not saying anything otherwise, but it's gotta suck being one of the 10 best players in this game, an NBA 75 member, and to be talked about like you're getting devalued and disrespected for something that you had nothing to do with from a decision making standpoint. Like it was not his call. He was not involved in this whatsoever, right?
Mhm.
And so for him to be in Dallas, for that injury to immediately happen because he's just trying to calm a fan base and win over like a group of people that he did not ask to be a part of, by the way. And I imagine for him, it's like that would be agonizing to go through a whole summer of Mavericks Twitter or the entire Mavericks fan base just in disarray and dismay. If you can even quiet that a little bit going into the off season, I imagine as a player there's some motivation there. But at the same time, somebody in this damn organization has to start thinking about the future of the organization because apparently that's just not a concept to Nico Harrison and Patrick Dumont and whoever the else is running this absolute dumpster fire in Dallas right now.
Yeah, Sean, I think this is something that I haven't really thought a ton about with Anthony Davis not asking for this situation. I think you're right. I mean, what have we heard the last 5 years from the Lakers organization, Sean? What we've heard from them is that this is AD's team in a post LeBron James era. He himself, yeah, he's
Mm-hmm.
had the injuries, but at least him playing, and I know, winning the championship in the bubble, he was a big contributor to that. And we've seen stretches where even last year, or sorry, 2 years ago, they made a Western Conference Finals run. They got swept by the Nuggets, but they still made it to the Western Conference Finals. And that was partly because of an Anthony Davis. But again, the injuries, the injuries, the injuries. But he knows, and we all know what he's capable of doing, but he can't stay on the court. And now he's in a totally new, different system, totally new, different role with an organization. He's not in LA anymore where the spotlight's on him, but he's in a fan base that wants to riot and not happy with that trade and him there. There's just a lot of things against Anthony Davis's corner. And the biggest factor out of all of this is that he's not getting any younger. And we know what
No.
bigs who have an injury history, who aren't getting younger in this stage of their career, normally happen to them. There's not a lot of life in years to come from them. So I do feel for the guy. I do really, think I really see, now that we're really talking of, wow, this is not the position he would have wanted at this point in his career. But he's given the cards that he's dealt with, and I know you're going to get a good effort from him, but is that effort enough to provide winning, meaningful basketball in Dallas, I just don't think so.
Yeah. I just think that there's too many obstacles in Anthony Davis's way. And when a lot of those obstacles are being put in place by the team in which that traded for you, that's what makes it difficult. And as our friend of the show, Mike Curtis, reported on Run It Back on FanDuel with Michelle Beadle and all those guys, he reported that the organization is motivated to extend Kyrie Irving this offseason. And I think they're still going to offer him a max extension, Troy, which, listen, as a basketball player, you and I both love the talent in the player and the performances that we see from a healthy Kyrie Irving. But I cannot help but feel like this is a worse version of the Kobe extension after he tore his Achilles for the Lakers. You know, like the for Dallas, you essentially have no choice. You painted yourself in this corner, like you can't lose Kyrie after you lost Luka Doncic.
Right.
That would be catastrophic. So you almost have to pay him that extension. But a guard who's in his mid 30s, who tore his ACL, who has been injury riddled throughout his entire career, who, yes, is a high skill guard, and that skill isn't necessarily going to go away. A lot of his separation is also predicated from his burst and from his athleticism and from his speed. And that shiftiness might not be as effective when you have just another ailment that you're going to be coming back from. Oh, and by the way, this essentially affects 2 seasons, because not only will he be out the rest of this season and postseason, he'll miss most of next season, and that will certainly affect whatever you can do in the postseason.
Yeah, no, I think that's spot on with his age, and you're right though. But yeah, I mean, I feel like you cannot tell me that this scenario didn't cross the Mavericks organization's mind when they traded Luka Doncic, right? I mean, these are the pillars you have now. You have a Kyrie Irving, and you have an Anthony Davis, and you also have a looming offseason that's fastly approaching. You like this is a scenario. You cannot tell me that the Mavericks haven't thought through this scenario. But also, we're talking about this because this is such a difficult scenario to work through. And you're right. I only see there being one option, and that one option is not a great one with giving
Yeah,
Kyrie, an extension.
it's it's something that they had to have thought about. You're absolutely right. But also, we know that it's very easy for these organizations to be overly confident of your people, of what you have in house, of what you're able to do, and it's almost like the "we can fix him" fallacy.
Yeah,
You know what
right.
I mean? It's like, yeah, he's had those problems throughout his career, but he hasn't been with our
Yeah,
medical
right,
team.
right.
Kyrie's had struggles in past situations, but he hasn't been in our culture. Yeah, like Klay Thompson, he had a very difficult end to his Golden State run, but he hasn't been with Jason Kidd in Dallas. Like, you know what I mean? It's like you can trick yourselves into going, well, if we manage it right, if the stars align, he's one of the best defensive players on the court. We have a pretty special guard in Kyrie. Like, if you're just putting it on paper and going, oh yeah, if everything goes right, this could be great. But clearly, he is not very effective or very competent in cost analysis, because not only did you potentially cost your franchise 10, like whatever your future was for the next 10 plus years. Troy, I don't even know if we're beginning to see what the financial ramifications are for this organization for losing a Luka Doncic. There's a potential that this could knock the value of the franchise by upwards of $1 billion.
Hmm.
That's how valuable these stars are. It's not just to the organization either. This is something that affects economies. I mean, look at what happened to
Yeah,
Cleveland after LeBron James left. The difference is LeBron chose to leave Cleveland. Luka wanted to stay in
yeah,
Dallas.
yeah. Very different circumstances, and very different things to look yourself in the mirror, right? Within the Cavs can say, hey, these are the cards we were dealt, and then the Mavs saying this is the reality in which we pushed. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it would be it's just one of those things where if we as a nation could just hook one person up to a lie detector test and just get their overall opinion on something, I would absolutely love to get Nico Harrison on a lie detector test and say, would you still do the trade?
uh, and
Because one person that we know for a fact is not happy with this trade, who has made it very vocal, who's pretty much going on a media tour talking about how he disagrees with the trade. Mark Cuban.
yeah, yeah. And Sean, this trade happened 7 weeks ago. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like, this isn't something that was 7 months ago. This is 7 weeks ago. This is still a very fresh trade. So for you to say, and all of us knew it wasn't going to work as fans. So, for you're right.
This is
Doing a lie detector test would be interesting, but go ahead.
oh, yeah, no, I'm sorry. Just I just this statistic just was brought up in my head. I sent this to you earlier in the week. Per ESPN, for the Los Angeles Lakers, there have been 3 players in the last 20 years who have had 5 games with 30 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists as a Laker. The past 20 years, Troy, think about that. 20 years. A guy that's done that in 5 games. Kobe Bryant. It took him a matter of 8 seasons to get that feat. LeBron took him about 7. Luka Doncic, 16
Yeah.
games. 16 games. And this is the guy that Dallas has been calling Fatty McFat out of the door. And now he was the problem, and we can't win a championship with this guy. And one team's gone up in the standings, and one team's gone down in the standings. And the team that's gone down is supposed to be the team that's winning now, and the Lakers are the team that's supposed to be winning in the future. Except the Lakers get to reap the benefits in the present and in the future.
Yeah. I I don't want to be a Mavericks fan ever.
Yeah. No. Well, don't worry, Troy. I don't think you ever will be, and I think a lot of people are going to
Yeah.
jump off that
Well,
ship while they
didn't
can.
you say too? One other element to this is the Mavs organization with their ticket prices. Well, are they're raising tickets next year?
Hey, literally the day that Kyrie Irving tore his ACL, before all that happened, they announced that their season ticket prices went up by like 8% or something
It just
to
makes
that
no
effect.
sense. There's
No,
nothing rational about that.
no, they are speed running, ruining their relationship with their fan base. Honestly, they might have broken the record already.
If this was a smaller market, not that Dallas is a massive market, but if it was even a smaller market, there could be we could be having talks of, at least in the modern day, lowest ticket sales. I'm talking about like next year, right? Like if if Milwaukee did this in like 2019 with Giannis,
Mm-hmm.
that next year could have been, well, next year was COVID, but the next year could have been the lowest ticket sales in
Mm-hmm.
NBA history in the modern day. And we still could see something like that with Dallas, but I think Dallas is still a big enough market where you're not going to quite see that. You would still need something to happen to Kyrie and Anthony Davis, because those guys are still worth watching even in this stage of their career, especially when all the chips are in their corner to make sure that they're going to succeed. But it raises a lot of interesting questions about their fan base and ticket sales moving forward, just by that simple fact alone of raising it after they've created this mess.
I'll say this. If things don't improve for the Dallas Mavericks on and off the court over the next few years, that scenario of a new basketball franchise in Dallas and this one being moved to a different city, I do not think that is out of the equation if they keep this up, because they are doing some borderline irreparable damage to their relationship with that city. And that is one of, like you said, if we're talking about like one of the, like one of the like smallest like markets in the league, if this is Charlotte, then they're just out and they just move on. And that's it, right? But this is Dallas. This is one of the most I know that it's a Cowboys town, but the fans that are Mavericks fans are some of the most energetic in the league.
Mhm.
And watching that Pistons game against the Mavericks a week ago, that was one of the most apathetic arenas I've ever heard in my entire life. Flat out. Like Dallas is like that is an emotionally spent and disengaged
Yeah.
franchise.
Yeah.
And the last time I've seen that from a fan base, again, I bring it up, is when the Pistons traded Chauncey for Allen Iverson.
Mm. Mhm.
That's something that takes time to recover from. And the difference is, at least Chauncey was a little older. At least he won a championship with that franchise.
Yeah.
At least he actually fulfilled what he was supposed to do. Luka never was even really given much of a chance.
Right, right. Well, the biggest thing, and we can even close on this, that you've brought up time and time again since this trade has happened. The Dallas Mavericks gave up on Luka Doncic before the Philadelphia 76ers gave up on Joel Embiid. If that doesn't put perspective into what this trade meant for their organization and just in the league as a whole, I don't know what else to tell you than that.
Yeah. I mean, Troy, when you use my own points against me, I can't I can't argue
Not
that. You
against
are
you, with
absolutely right.
you.
I know. I'm just kidding. But Troy, seriously, man, it's really great to have you back. Always, always just appreciate getting to do this each and every week with you. And I'm reminded of that when I don't get to do it with you on a Monday afternoon. So thank you so much for being back and for doing this with me, and for everyone for joining us here on the pod. We really appreciate you. Be sure you like and subscribe so you're not missing any of the content. We'll catch you guys next time from Half Court. Be sure you're subscribed.